Hello everyone, my name is Infinity and this is Magnetize Yourself, where we talk about life, love, spirituality, and of course the law of attraction. Today's video comes in response to a request. Someone asked me to speak on generational curses and how to break them. I've been talking a lot about generational curses because the idea of inner child wounding and healing has been emerging a lot throughout recent readings I've done on my channel. Many of us at this time on the planet are being called to become what we call generational curse breakers. What do I mean by a generational curse? There's a lot of fantasy surrounding the idea of a curse. I'm not talking about some kind of fantastical fairy tale magic curse that requires some mystical solution to break. What I'm talking about are patterns of unconscious thoughts, belief systems that are passed down from one generation to the next, and on it goes until someone stands up and decides to set a new pattern, to uproot that previous generational curse or thought pattern and forge a new path. By forging that new path for themselves, the so-called generational curse breaker of a family sets a new path that will allow not only themselves, but their children and their children's children and all future generations to follow, will allow these future generations to much more easily follow this new path, follow in their footsteps, energetically speaking. But it's very difficult to be the first one to break that pattern. Because when you break a generational curse, you are essentially saying no. You are saying that the way you were taught to think about the world, about yourself, about life is flawed. You are resolving to change it. And the problem and why it is so difficult to do that is because many of these beliefs and thought patterns are so deeply entrenched into our psyche. You could think of them as being programmed into our very DNA, into the cells of our being, because of how unconscious we are of these so-called curses or thought patterns. So how do we identify a generational curse? Because like I said, very often these curses are deeply entrenched beliefs or thought patterns that are passed down through generations that we are very unconscious about. Oftentimes, these are thoughts that we were taught to think from infancy. So they are simply our paradigm. It is our view of the world, our belief system of the world. We don't even realize that things could be any different or that things are supposed to be any different. So the only way to truly identify a generational curse is by how it impacts our lives in a negative, unwanted way. So usually we can know there is a generational curse in our family for a certain topic or issue when we experience a feeling of stuckness with that issue that feels like an unbreakable pattern, something that resurfaces over and over again, a barrier that we just can't seem to break through no matter how hard we try. The true barrier, the invisible wall we are coming up against is our own limiting belief, the unconscious belief, that generational curse that is causing us to find ourselves meeting with the same limitations and problems over and over again, no matter how hard we consciously try to change. So the first step to breaking a generational curse is to identify it, which again I said is a process not to be underestimated, because Usually these are stemming from very unconscious and deeply ingrained thought patterns. So to identify a generational curse, we could call this step 1 to breaking a generational curse, is to identify it, which, like I said earlier, can only be done through usually identifying the negative outcomes that we are experiencing in our life. So for example, if you find that you have a habit of attracting unreliable or untrustworthy romantic partners over and over again, this means that you most likely have a generational curse around love. And specifically, this could be connected to feeling unable to trust a romantic partner because you believe that you can't trust your romantic partners. This belief causes you to continuously attract untrustworthy romantic partners in order to continue confirming your own beliefs, because we will unconsciously attract people, events, situations, and outcomes that align with our beliefs. In this case, the limiting beliefs we're calling generational curses. So you may find that when you trace this belief back in your family, you can see that this attraction of untrustworthy partners is something that generations before you dealt with in some way. Maybe one of your parents was an untrustworthy partner to their spouse, or maybe it was your grandparents or your great-grandparents. So the second step to breaking a generational curse is that once you identify the pattern within yourself, you can now connect that pattern to other family members. This is how you can know that this particular limiting belief or negative unconscious thought pattern you have isn't just within you, but is actually a pattern of thinking passed down through your family. So just to give another example of a generational curse that is not necessarily love-related, if you have a generational curse for poverty, for example, which is a very common one, then most likely either your parents always struggled financially or your grandparents, or on and on down the line. And this way of thinking, this money limitation, this feeling of lack of financial abundance was handed down to you as the next generation. It was given from one generation to the next until it finally reached you. So if you have a generational curse for poverty, you may find that regardless of how much money you have, it always seems to vanish. Or maybe you find that you just are unable to attract money at all. No matter what career you go into, no matter what skill set you develop, you always seem to find yourself in a situation of financial lack. That could be a clear indication of a generational curse of poverty, which again, you can usually trace back to other previous members and generations of your family. So once you have identified the generational curse that you are dealing with, and you have been able to trace it back to previous generations to find this pattern, identify this pattern within your family, the third step to breaking a generational curse is to rewrite the pattern. Now, one thing you need to know about rewriting the pattern is it usually doesn't happen overnight. So you have to be patient with yourself through this process, because you must remember that this pattern is ancient. It didn't start with you. It started generations and generations before you. It has been passed down through your family, and this belief, these negative patterns have built momentum as they were passed down through the generations. So by the time they reach you, they are very, very powerful and ancient and deeply entrenched beliefs, which is why we refer to them so dramatically as curses, because they do feel like they have such a strong pull on you. So now that you've identified what it is you feel cursed with, and you can trace the pattern back through your family, you have to begin to notice whenever you feel the pull of this pattern, of this negative pattern, of this curse. So for example, if you are working on resolving a generational curse, breaking a generational curse of being a woman who feels unworthy, feels undeserving of love. And let's say that your mother and your grandmother and your great-grandmother all attracted relationships with men that reflected their own belief in their unworthiness of love. They were with a man who maybe didn't treat them right and who constantly caused them to question or doubt their own power, their own worthiness. You must begin to rewrite this pattern. So there are many ways to go about doing this, but some of my favorite ways are 1, through spoken affirmations. So usually whenever I am trying to break a certain pattern in my life, I will write out 10 to 15 affirmations that really resonate with my heart and soul. And every morning, repeat these affirmations to yourself for 10 minutes in the mirror. What we are doing here is changing your inner dialogue, changing the way you think about yourself. And not just that, but also changing the way you speak about yourself, not only aloud, but in your own head. By speaking affirmations to yourself around the generational curse you are trying to break, you are creating a new habit of speech within your own mind and in regards to the way you speak about yourself and to others. And this can radically begin to transform your energy and lift whatever curse you are experiencing. So the second way to break a generational curse, to rewrite the pattern, is to focus on reprogramming your subconscious mind. Because the thing about affirmations is I find them to be very powerful, but only when coupled with reprogramming the subconscious mind, because spoken affirmations are targeted mainly to the conscious mind. So we must also focus on what research has shown to be really 95% of the mind, the unconscious mind. I like to take a really comprehensive approach to lifting a generational curse, to reprogramming our thoughts and beliefs by focusing on changing both the conscious and the subconscious mind. So the spoken affirmations are targeted to the conscious mind, and now we need a way to reprogram the subconscious mind. And personally, I have found that the best way to reprogram the subconscious is by listening to subliminals. So the reason that subliminals affect the subconscious mind so powerfully is because they are audio meditation tracks that contain spoken affirmations that are embedded within other tones, frequencies, and meditation sounds. So unlike traditional spoken affirmations that we discussed earlier, subliminals are designed to mask the affirmations, to hide the affirmations from the conscious mind. So you won't actually be able to hear the affirmations while listening. But this is why they are so powerful, because in doing this, we bypass the conscious filter of the mind and allow these affirmations to deeply impact and reprogram the subconscious mind. So regardless of what type of generational curse you are thinking about as I speak in this podcast, I have created over 100 subliminals that can help you reprogram your mind and break whatever generational curse that may be. So as you can see on the screen, I have subliminals for physical appearance changes, for things like even weight loss and metabolism, for shifting your entire mood and energy in some radical way, like your confidence, your happiness levels, your energy levels. And even when it comes to love and relationships, I have subliminals for attracting supportive partners, for changing your relationships, for improving your relationship, and even for attracting a specific person. So I really invite you to explore this website if it resonates with you. And when you sign up for a 7-day free trial account on my website, you can access any of the subliminals I've created completely free. So I just like to mention that because in my own life, I've found subliminals to be an incredibly valuable and useful tool for reprogramming my own subconscious thoughts. Personally, I will just share a generational curse in my family that I lifted using this technique of using both affirmations, spoken affirmations, and subliminals combined. And the greatest generational curse I have lifted within my family is the curse of believing that I could never earn money or start a career doing something I loved. Now I am doing YouTube full-time, sharing videos here full-time, and I am so grateful to have manifested this soul-based, soul-centered career, but I truly believe that it was this combination of spoken affirmations and listening to subliminals that helped me really deeply reprogram those subconscious beliefs I had regarding how money came to me, regarding my finances, career. My parents had always told me growing up, they had always said that hobbies should be kept as hobbies and that you couldn't really make money doing something that you were passionate about, that no one really liked their job, that no one liked the way that they made money. And so I really took on that limiting belief for many, many, many years of my life as my own. But the truth is, this wasn't my true limitation. This was a self-imposed, a generationally imposed limitation. This was my parents teaching me a way of seeing the world based upon what they had been taught by their parents, and on down the line. So the subliminal I personally use to break this generational curse in my life is my 7 chakra clearing subliminal, because this really helped me to clear out pockets of energetic resistance and certain specific negative beliefs passed down through the generations that were stored through my 7 chakras. So if you would like to explore that subliminal specifically, I will leave specific information about that in the description box as well. So just to recap, to break a generational curse, step 1, identify it. Step 2, trace it back in your family line. This is really just to confirm to you the source of this generational curse or thought pattern. Step 3, use a combination of spoken affirmations and listening to subliminals to fully reprogram your subconscious and conscious mind and break the curse of negative thinking that is causing this pattern of stuckness in this area of your life. And finally, the last step, the last technique that I would incorporate along with subliminals and spoken affirmations is visualization. Now, you can visualize at any point in the day, either while walking, running, exercising, cleaning, or even while meditating. But the key is that I want you to visualize for 15 to 30 minutes a day that you have broken that curse. Essentially transport yourself into a world, into a life in which you have already overcome this generational curse, in which you are living as the person you want to be. Let's say you have a generational curse for love, like in the previous example. Imagine that you are already with that person who treats you like a king or a queen. You are in that loving, wonderful, amazing, supportive relationship. If you have a generational curse related to poverty, imagine in this visualization that you are as wealthy as you can possibly imagine yourself to be. Imagine that you have such an abundance of money, you can purchase or travel or do absolutely anything you could possibly want. So again, just whatever it is, allow yourself to be transported into that reality. We call this, in the law of attraction community, acting as if. The reason this is so important is because if you have a generational curse in your life, you have been trained to see yourself in a certain way. And that self-image is part of what is keeping you so stuck in that generational curse, in that pattern. Because in your mind's eye, in your mind, all day long, subconsciously, you see yourself in a certain way. And because you see yourself that way, you continue to play out, to act, to speak, to attract in ways that are aligned with that self-image, with that vision of yourself. So the key through this visualization is to transform your self-image, to change the way you see yourself, which will then completely change the way you think, speak, act, and ultimately what you attract into your life. So thank you so much for listening to today's podcast. I hope this was helpful to those of you who had more questions about generational curses and how to break them. If I did resonate with you, please do subscribe to this channel. Join our community of like-minded, conscious, creative beings here on YouTube. You can also follow me on Instagram at Magnetize Yourself and check out my library of over 100 subliminals on soundandsoulful.com. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll talk to you again in the next podcast.